Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everybody. I'm more well-rested, a little more calm, which is nice. And, let's get into it. Plenty of moving parts, per usual. The story never ends. And what are we on now? This is day 6 of not knowing the brand of the gun. This is day 6 of not knowing the caliber of bullet. This is day 6 of not having pictures of any of that, and yet they have pictures of so much more. Isn't that interesting? I, of course, have seen the different kinds of takes on the entire thing, different situations, different footage. Again, you would basically have to go to the war videos and watch those, frankly, in order to, read the different posts and look at the different videos regarding all of it. And I'll break down a few things in this particular episode about what took place last Saturday, but I'm inclined to just call that entire incident the Saturday incident. Because again, there's so many moving parts and there's so many different things happening at once and so much deception involved in all of it that it's very difficult to figure out what is what. But there are some things that, again, can be honed in on correctly, but even when you do that, as you might imagine, there's endless questions that come with it also. So, I'll tell you what. Here's where I want to start. In fact, let me tell you where I'm going to end. I want to end with a very interesting story, and it's actually a conversation now that I've had with at least 3 friends and a couple of family members here over the last week. And it has to do with numerology, and it has to do with particular signs that we see in our daily life and that kind of wavelength. So I have a rather interesting story that I want to tell at the end of this episode to round this out, but stay tuned for that. Okay, first of all, I guess I should start here. Who is our enemy? This is kind of an important question. Who remains our enemy? Who continues to be our enemy? What does our enemy want us to believe? What does our enemy want us to see, say, repeat, and then applaud? And at the RNC Convention, what you are seeing here time and time again is the illusion of unity, quote unquote, and our enemies taking the stage and then getting people, i.e. the American people, and American citizens to repeat what they want us to repeat and to believe what they want us to actually believe. This has to do, of course, with lots of different Twitter accounts, X accounts, social media accounts, personalities, so on and so on and so on. And then at the exact same time, there are a number of individuals who are remaining dead silent when people are told to repeat a particular thing. I'm being very specific here, but what I'm talking about is the Jewish lobby. I watched Nikki Haley's speech, which only lasted about 11 minutes, and everything that she said was remarkably absurd, as you might imagine. Excuse me. And at the exact same time, on the screen they were showing Donald Trump's face. When Nikki Haley was speaking and Donald Trump was looking at her and listening, when she was talking about foreign affairs, she had no idea what she was talking about, and clearly wasn't telling the truth, and was telling exactly what the Jewish lobby wanted her to say, and just repeating what she was told to say. And again, the look on Donald Trump's face clearly looked like he knew that she was being controlled and that she was just repeating the same old narrative that the Jewish lobby wants everybody to repeat. And this is a fact. Again, she sounds completely incompetent when it comes to foreign affairs. After her, of course, and the very next day, more individuals took to the stage to again try to rally the troops, so to speak, and all the American people into believing everything that Israel says. And that we are spokespeople for Israel, and we are the lobbying organizations that are here in America, and we are subverting your government, and we are the ones that are really in control. We are the ones that hold the money. We're the ones that do this. We're the ones that do that. And there were 2 individuals that took to the stage that I want to mention right now. One of them goes by the name of Shabbos Kestenbaum. And this individual got up there, kind of a younger looking guy, but he got up there and claimed to speak for all college campuses, and we're all being victimized on college campuses, and woe is me. Again, the kind of general theme throughout this particular episode and in this particular timeline is a constant reminder of who our real enemy is. And it really is anybody who does not support Christ and anybody who does not support America. That if they are a foreign agent or being paid by any lobbying group or outside country while they live in ours, they are not our ally. So before I get into old Shabbos Kestenbaum here real quick, there was an audio clip bouncing around that I thought was just perfect. It was emblematic of the entire situation that we are in right now, where people are feeding you one thing and yet the exact opposite is actually happening. And then gets proven, believe it or not, in the exact same clip, certainly in this particular case. There was a clip bouncing around, which I think I have in a war video here. If it wasn't on Wednesdays, it'll be on Saturdays, I believe. But it was who was it? It was Kevin McCarthy, and he's on CNN on the floor of the RNC Convention, and he's talking to a CNN reporter that Caitlin Clark, I believe her name is, or whatever. I mean, she's, again, also Jewish and remarkably terrible. But either way, she was interviewing him, and she was asking him about division in the RNC and division in the Republican Party. Kevin McCarthy, of course, is a horrible human being. But he's there, and fortunately he's out of Congress now and whatever else, but there he is. And he's talking about how unified everybody is. We're all unified, and what happened to Trump was terrible, and we're all unified, and we're more unified now than we've ever been. That's exactly what a tool of the Jewish lobby has to tell people. And then what happened next was perfect. What happened next is Matt Gaetz, Congressman Matt Gaetz from Florida, comes around the bend, comes up in between the two of them, looks at Kevin McCarthy and starts to ask him whether or not he's going to give a speech on the stage, because if he does, he's going to get booed off of stage. That he won't be able to give a speech, and you're going to get booed, and, this is what's going to happen, and what time are you speaking, and are you speaking, you're going to get booed. And then Kevin McCarthy makes a quick comment about a congressman being investigated by the ethics committee for sleeping with a 17-year-old girl. You can immediately assume that he immediately brought that up because, of course, Matt Gaetz is the individual that he's implying is that person, and so on and so on. So I thought it was absolutely perfect that here in this one clip you had a situation of Kevin McCarthy trying to tell people, who, by the way, he's a pathological liar. Hell, they all are. But even so, here he is trying to tell CNN that the Republican Party's united in a way they've never been before. And then here comes Matt Gaetz, and he throws a monkey wrench right into the entire thing and proves that there's actually more division than anybody can possibly imagine. Now, like I said in the last episode, one of the verbal tics that you can consistently pick up on, and it's an audio clue, is that when anybody is saying something on a stage, in particular trying to get people to, like I said at the top of the show, repeat something or believe something or support a particular thing, and then they ask the crowd to do that at the speaker's direction. When there's a lull in the crowd, that's the first audio signal that the thing that the person is asking everybody to support, not everybody supports. Certainly a great deal of people, if not the vast majority. The second clue, of course, is a visual tic and a visual clue, which is, and they do this at the RNC with regularity, which is hilarious, they will show the crowd when a speaker is trying to get the crowd to repeat something or say something, and they'll show the faces of people in the crowd, and you actually see a great deal of people not repeating the thing that the speaker wants them to repeat. That also proves division. It proves that there is not unity. The only thing that people want, really, certainly the awake people like us, is we just want the truth. And what we've learned thus far, and certainly Saturday's event should prove it to everybody, is that you're not going to get it. It isn't going to happen. Not on some grand stage with a bunch of people and chanting and gimmicks and party hats and balloons and signs and blah, blah, blah. You're not going to get it. It isn't going to happen. And yes, this is unfortunate. I wish individuals would stop bashing Adolf Hitler. I wish individuals would read real history. I wish individuals would investigate and look for clues and then make real historic connections and connect dots and do all of the things that they really should do as an individual human being with an individual brain. This unfortunately doesn't happen in groups of people and large groups of people. It's certainly not on a stage like the RNC or even the DNC. It just doesn't happen. So with that said, I want to play some audio here, which may give some of this away, some of what I just described. What you're going to hear is an individual who goes by the name of Matthew Brooks. He's the executive director of the Republican Jewish Coalition. Now, Matthew Brooks is Jewish. However, the last name Brooks is not Jewish. So this individual is a name-changing shapeshifter. And they do this consistently to try to make it look like they're not Jewish when in fact they are. The origin of the name Brooks comes from the English word brook, or even the German name Braus, if you go back far enough. It's not Jewish. It's English, Anglo-Saxon. Happens to be my last name. We are not related. Trust me, again, I'm not Jewish, but this guy is. You may be familiar with Mel Brooks, the famous director of Blazing Saddles and a number of other things. His last name, of course, is Kaminsky. It is not Brooks. So they change their names because they're told to. Your name sounds too Jewish, so let's change it. And then they give them an English or Anglo-Saxon name or another name that is clearly not Jewish. I just want to make that abundantly clear that the last name Brooks is not a Jewish name. With that said, this individual is shady as hell. And before I play his audio, I want you to know that he does not have a Wikipedia page. However, all of his associations, or at least a great deal of them, are certainly right here under Freedom's Watch on Wikipedia. So Freedom's Watch, it says, is a 501c4 lobbying organization. Shocking. Freedom's Watch was supportive of the George W. Bush administration's positions in the war on terror and of Republican congressional candidates. The group was run and supported in part by several former officials of the Bush administration. The organization stated that its goals was, quote, educating individuals about and advancing public policies that protect America's interests at home and abroad, foster economic prosperity, and strengthen families. Now, we know that doesn't mean America. That doesn't mean American families. It means indoctrinate the ever-living hell out of anybody who lives here, all with the support of the Jewish lobby to, again, brainwash the masses into believing whatever they say. It says in the 2008 election cycle, Freedom's Watch purchased advertisements in support of Republican congressional candidates. Bradley A. Blakeman, every single time, Republican strategist and former member of George W. Bush's senior staff, served as president. In December of 2008, the organization's board of directors decided to shut it down, hilarious, at the end of 2008. Now here's where old Matthew Brooks comes into play. Under the Origins tab here, it says Freedom's Watch had a working relationship with the Republican Jewish Coalition and the American Enterprise Institute. The group was conceived at a Florida meeting of the RJC, Republican Jewish Coalition, in March of 2007, in part to counter MoveOn.org and help the Bush administration sell its Iraq policy. It was founded by a 12 people, most notably Sheldon Adelson, or Adelson, my apologies, we know who he is, who donated almost all of its initial funding. Jewish. 4 out of 5 members of Freedom Watch's original board were Republican Jews, and 4 of the 8 initial donors were Jewish. Though board member Matt Brooks said, quote, "It would be a mistake to regard the group as having a Jewish direction," unquote. Hilarious. And noted that, quote, "half of the donors contributing to the group's first 15 million ad campaign are not Jewish." That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But it goes on here, and I have to keep reading this. It says, in 2008, the group became paralyzed by internal problems that plagued by gridlock and infighting. Shocking also. Stereotypical, according to Republican operatives who criticized Adelson's insistence on parceling out money project by project, which limited the group's ability to plan and to be nimble. For example, the organization spent weeks working on a package of the presidential election, but the plan did not go forward. Some staff members blamed the problems on major donors who micromanaged the management of the startup. It goes into positions, the board members, donors. Again, the board members are Ari Fleischer, former Bush press secretary, Jewish; Matthew Brooks, executive director of the Republican Jewish Coalition, Jewish; Mel Sembler, a longtime RJC leader and former ambassador to Italy who helped finance the 2000 Florida recount ballot, Jewish; and William Widener, a Las Vegas casino operator, Jewish. Do you see what's happening here? This is the problem. So now let me play a little bit of Matthew Brooks himself on the RNC stage, I believe on Wednesday. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, Milwaukee! Let me hear you cheer if you support Israel. Let me hear you cheer if you support Israel. Now, if someone tried that at the Democrats' convention, they'd be booed off the stage. But here, at the Republican convention, we proudly and loudly stand with Israel. This election is a critical moment for the American Jewish community and for Israel. This is our chance to continue the incredible pro-Israel legacy of the most pro-Israel president in history, Donald J. Trump. President Trump, among his many accomplishments, many of which they said couldn't be done, but he did it. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. They said it couldn't be done, but he weakened the Iranian regime. They said it couldn't be done, but he delivered the historic Abraham Accords, bringing us closer to peace in the Middle East. With President Trump, we will repair and rebuild the U.S.-Israel relationship that has deteriorated after 4 disastrous years under President Biden. Now, today, 9 months after the historic Hamas attacks, shockingly, President Biden is still withholding critical arms that Israel needs to defend itself. Boo. America must stand with Israel and against the terrorists, especially Iran. We must stand with the Israeli people. Now, my message here today to the Jewish community is clear. There is only one pro-Israel party, and it's the Republican Party. And here at home, under Donald Trump, we will put a stop to the rising tide of anti-Semitism. President Trump will bring back law and order so that American Jews can once again wear a kippah and walk the streets without fear. President Trump will stop the mobs on the college campuses so Jewish students feel safe when they go to class. The Jewish community is ready to help elect Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. The Jewish vote continues to increase for Republicans year after year, and I promise you 2024 will be no different. So let me ask all of you, who will best stand up to the Hamas sympathizers and the squad? Donald Trump. Who will best stand with Israel? Donald Trump. Who will make sure Jews feel safe and secure? Thank you, RNC, for the opportunity to speak today. And thank you, President Trump, for your commitment to elevating Jewish American voices. Together, unified, we will win. Am Yisrael High.
First of all, what he said at the end there, the Am Israel High, is apparently a Jewish solidarity anthem meaning the people of Israel live. Okay. First of all, yuck. Second of all, like I said, there's some audio clues there that not everybody supports what he's saying. There are even more visual clues if you actually watch the clip itself. There are people shaking their heads in disagreement. There are people sitting with their arms crossed looking down. There are people looking away from him in embarrassment. This is a thing. This division is a good thing because they're our enemy. They own the money. They manipulate all kinds of situations. And you actually heard just there the manipulation in real time with what he was actually saying. He has officially stated that the quote-unquote Jewish community stands up with the Republicans and not the Democrats. Well, they own both sides. So what's going to happen at the RNC Convention? Are Jewish leaders going to come out in support of whomever that they're supporting on the RNC side? Probably. They'll have to. Again, it dates back to the October 7th nonsense and that whole nonsense thing and whatever the hell that was. Which again, I have no proof that any of it actually took place. What we do have proof of is that Israeli IDF soldiers were killing their own people to accomplish a particular storyline that they wanted to accomplish and embed in the minds of the gullible who watch television and believe it. But again, this is the problem. This is a huge problem. Freedom of speech exists in the United States, and it is allowed to, even on college campuses. But remember, the goal of the Jewish lobby and the Khazarian mafia is to make criticizing them illegal. It already is in numerous countries around the world. The goal is to get that to be the case here in the United States. Thank God we have a constitution, but even so, that doesn't mean that individuals who engage in freedom of speech and freedom of expression aren't going to be targeted, because they certainly are. Now let me get back to this kid, this Shabbos Kestenbaum. This guy came out in the evening on Wednesday, and he came out, of course, in this entire section where they were talking about education, and they were talking again about whatever it was, Jews being targeted on college campuses. He comes out and he says what he says, and it was awful, as you would expect. It's right up there with Matthew Brooks's, or whatever his real last name is. It was right up there with that, and he was again trying to get everybody to chant, and people weren't, and they're like, who's this kid, and what's with a small hat, and blah, blah, blah. And it was beyond embarrassing. But this is the best part about social media. Social media exists, and it never forgets. So on June 9th of this year, 2024, Shabbos Kestenbaum on X stated the following, quote, I am a Democrat. I spoke out against Russia interference in the 2016 election to sow division and supported policies to combat it. I am begging my party to now immediately do the same with Iran. And then he links a particular picture where it says, Biden Intel Chief, Iran funding, emboldening anti-Israel protests in U.S. to sow discord. So if this is real, well, oops, he got caught. Again, this deception is happening in front of people's faces in real time, and they don't pick up on it. They look at it at face value, they believe it, they support it. Like, again, seals at a circus. They get them to stand up on their back tail and flap their flippers and then take the fish. And they do it all of the time. On the floor of the RNC Convention, you actually have, I'm not making this up, I saw the video and I'll put it in the next war video. You have individuals having bandages taped to their ears, like Donald Trump's, in support of Donald Trump. Again, as what? As a gimmick? Are they going to start selling ear covers that say MAGA on them? I mean, what next? And again, I don't want anybody to get confused here. If he was shot at, it's awful. If he was hit, that's awful. Divine intervention? I certainly hope so. We know that what took place that day isn't what we're being told. We're all well aware. I'm simply pointing out the brainwashing of the masses regardless of political party. I'm a conservative. Everybody who listens to this knows that. I'm an abolitionist. I don't like government. I hate it. Every aspect of it. Anything it touches turns to dust. What we also know, however, is the Jewish lobby has its fingers in all of this all of the time. All of the time. And this blind support for individuals who have since the beginning of time claimed victimhood. It's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. And they have their hooks, of course, in endless politicians and endless people, including Nikki Haley. Perhaps a little bit of Donald Trump as well, if not a great deal. Certainly a lot of his donors are. As I've said in the past, and I'm going to repeat this probably numerous times throughout this episode, we have to see particular things cease to exist in order for us to know that things are moving in an objective, freedom-loving direction. If they aren't, and we aren't seeing them, then there's a problem. Because right now, again, the Jews and the Jewish lobby are screaming victimhood now more so than ever before, and of course, seeking to profit from it and remain relevant. It's not working. That's the good news. People are waking up to this. They're waking up to the control that they have, and they don't like it. The American people, who are freedom-loving people, in particular those who are not Jewish, don't like this. But again, I have to say this too, because this right here, this really cuts to the quick for me. The other day, of course, when I played the Harmeet Dillon audio, you had Cat Turd, who we all know is this, this bearded cowboy hat wearing dude who, goes by the handle of Cat Turd, and he has a podcast and whatever else and makes money on X with his opinions and blah, blah, blah. Rightfully so, everybody was mocking Harmeet Dillon for not having any social awareness whatsoever regarding her ridiculous chanting and our one true God and whoever that person is. And so Cat Turd took to X, which, by the way, they don't post on Gab anymore, so they used Gab when they got their account deleted on X, and then went back to X because Gab was where the truth existed. And this individual doesn't want to open up their mind to who the real enemy is, let alone call them out. So that should tell you all that you need to know about Cat Turd, is that this dumbass individual doesn't want to really learn about real world history, American history, and who our enemy is. Which means what about them? It means they're no different than our enemy because they're seeking to profit from censorship, and self-censorship is censorship. So this should tell you how spineless this individual is. But in this little X thread this X post that they made, they basically said, stop making fun of her. We're all in this together. We're all on the same side. We need to support each other no matter what, and blah, blah, blah. No. The answer to that is a big fat no. We don't. We don't. I also came across this particular YouTube post, again, emblematic of the kind of person who doesn't understand war and doesn't have the stomach for it, let alone the courage to pull a knife or pull a trigger if need be. In fact, these are the very kinds of people who can't defend themselves. These people are incapable of recognizing who their true enemy is and then ultimately being vigilant and putting themselves in a position to actually defend themselves. I tried to find the little YouTube short video and I couldn't, so I apologize. But I remember a couple of words that were on the screen. One of them was pastor, so it was some pastor, and then another one either said Cedarville or Centerville. I don't know which, I forget. But it's this older gentleman, and he's wearing glasses, and he's in the woods with his wife, and his wife is holding the phone out in front of the two of them, and he's got his arm around her as, again, they're filming themselves, and the sun is behind him. And he says, and he's crying. I mean, he's basically in tears, and she isn't. But he's taller than she is, and he's saying things like, what happened, of course, to Donald Trump was terrible, and this is awful, and we need to stop being divisive in our country on both political sides, he said. And we have to stop with this division, and we all have to unite together, and this, that, and the other. Now, that can be taken a couple of different ways, but his entire body language and the crying and just the beta male attitude, this is the kind of person who would take in an illegal alien to then only have the illegal alien stab his wife and kill them both. Something along those lines, okay? These are the do-gooders that are the real problem. The people who will swear up and down that they're helping everybody, and yet they probably don't even carry a gun on a daily basis. They probably aren't that vigilant of people. They're certainly not awake. Because again, they're believing everything at face value without thinking, critically thinking, or analyzing, or sifting through evidence, and so on and so on and so on. This is an individual, again, who probably watches television and believes it. Should we be divisive against that person and understand that that individual and that those individuals aren't awake and don't know what's going on? The answer is yes. We get to be divisive on that standpoint. We get to say, these people aren't awake. These people are awake. These people don't know what's going on. These people do know what's going on. We get to do that. And we get to do that whenever we want, because that's our country. The point I'm making is that anybody claiming that we all need to blindly unite with one another and all these different fractions that exist just because people say so is absurd. It's so short-sighted, myopic, and every other word you want to use. It defies logic. It isn't logical. This is a war. And metaphorically, if there is an open battlefield, some of us are further ahead than others. Some people are still taking selfies in the woods, pretending that they've got it all figured out. And if they just get on YouTube and make a video that says, we all need to unite, let's all just get along. I'm sorry. The answer is no. We know who the enemy is, and it's in times like these where the enemy is doing whatever they can to profit from it, gain more traction, and manipulate more people. Case in point, Matthew Brooks's speech. Case in point, the old Shabbos Kestenbaum guy. This is constant. This is a constant. Now let me mention this, because I'm still talking about the lobby here. This was from SGAnon. You can take him with a grain of salt if you'd like, but this is the truth. This happened. The stock DJT, which is Donald Trump's social media / media technology group. I have some stock in this, by the way. It was shorted like nobody's business, and this is making the rounds, and lots of people already know this. But I just wanted to let you know who was shorting it. Who do you think was actually shorting this? It's Jewish lobby groups. Why were they shorting it? Before Saturday. Did they know something was going to happen? Did they think something was going to happen? They thought it was going to just flat out crash and crumble. It didn't. The exact opposite happened. This war is taking place in the stock market constantly and has been for a very long time. Stock market's always been manipulated by man, and it's always been manipulated by the Jewish lobby. Hell, they created it. I mean, it's theirs. They created it. Here's what SG Anon said, quote, "It's interesting that one of the firms which took an enormous short position against DJT one day before the assassination attempt of 7/13 has now been identified as Austin Private Wealth, LLC, which is majority owned by George Soros and BlackRock. Jewish." A quick dive on APW LLC shows the firm to be connected to Presidents George Bush Sr. and Jr., who attended events and were involved in the company's charitable outreach, quote unquote. Former Secretary of State and HW's Chief of Staff James Baker has been the firm's senior policy director since 2006. It goes on here, it says APW LLC, according to their website, also directly supports the ACLU, ADL, Anti-Defamation League Austin, Shalom Austin, Camp Young Judea, Austin Jewish Academy, and Hadassah, if I'm saying that right, whatever the hell that is. But they're all Jewish. Recall also that it was Alex Soros who first infamously shared the Atlantic magazine cover, which featured a bullet hole in glass with a picture of $47 in cash, a message some interpreted as a cryptic hit, quote unquote, being put out against President Trump by the Soros family. There's another little post here associated with kind of the same general meme, but it says the following, quote, "A company called Austin Private Wealth LLC shorted 12 million shares of DJT via a put option. The filing date is July 12th, the day before the assassination attempt. They have around $1 billion in assets under management, and this is by far the largest put placed. According to a source, the trade represents 6% of total shares and over 16% of the float of the stock, given the fact that Trump owns 60% of the company," unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, if Donald Trump is the commander-in-chief, and this is a series of text messages that have been thrown my way, of course, and a number of emails as well. But if he continues to be the commander-in-chief as we know and as we believe, which was also brought up, of course, by our anonymous contributor to the show regarding Space Force and the NSA, you would have to have surveillance over the entire Saturday incident in a way to catch numerous individuals in the act. There would have to be military surveillance, even from the sky, as what was pointed out to me, to even again surveil the movement and the chatter and the cell phones and the IDs of everybody around. Which again continues to prove how strange it is that we have yet to see even a picture of a gun, let alone know the caliber of the bullet that was used, or bullets plural. And then, of course, number of shooters and how many shooters there actually were. And who was actually doing the shooting, etc., etc. I mean, we don't have these answers. But there would have to be massive surveillance of these people, catching these people, assuming that all of this is a sting operation. And why would you not let, or I should say this, why would you let an opportunity slip through your fingers to catch these people with a sting operation? If this is all military planning at its finest, Q drops and the whole thing. And Donald Trump, again, when he was in office, saying, "We've caught them all, we've got them all." I have no reason to doubt that. They would have to. They would have to have these people dead to rights. As even's been pointed out regarding military tribunals. In a military tribunal, when they arrest you and they bring you in front of the tribunal, it's not a trial. It's not a jury's going to decide. They show you what you've done. and then they show you the laws you broke. And it's undeniable in a military tribunal. And then that's it. It's not a few good men. That's not what it is. It's not that movie. It's been explained to me that a military tribunal is straight up, we have you in custody. Here's video of you. Here's photos of you. Here's the evidence, and here's the laws you broke. What do you think? And then they shit themselves because it's game over. So if that is going on, and if that, of course, continues to happen, as we know Gitmo was rebuilt and expanded, there's absolutely zero indication to me that there aren't many moving parts to this very interesting thing that's taking place. It's just very hard, as you might expect, to turn off the noise and all of the, Jews in the lobby screaming for everybody to support them and give us shekels and blah, blah, blah. I mean, all of that's so exhausting. And again, the dog and pony show of people getting on stage and telling their personal stories and a number of other things. And some of them are heartbreaking. I mean, they really are. When the 13 families got up there and were talking about how their family members were killed, who were serving overseas in Afghanistan when we pulled out of there, apparently, all of that, that was heartbreaking listening to these parents talk. And then, in typical RNC Convention fashion, they follow that up with a useless speech. And then somebody else comes on after that person and gives halfway decent speech, and then it's followed up by crap. So it's always just like hit and miss with every single person that ends up on stage. But man, yes, there is division. There's going to be. It's war. It's war. And this is a different kind of war, as we all know. This is not a straight up, let's load our muskets and charge each other war. That's not what this is. Our real enemy is embedded like a tick in our country. All over our country, in numerous organizations, and they hire other ticks. This is what happens. Look at the education business, for Christ's sake. It's the same thing. It's a big gay tick. Isn't it? that's what the education business is. It's certainly what other businesses are. It's nepotistic. It's corrupt. They believe that not hiring white people is a good thing. We need to hire more people of color, they say. Well, who's feeding them that line? Who's feeding them that wavelength of thought? It's not them. They aren't smart enough to come up with that on their own. The Jewish lobby is feeding them that line and that lie. And look what's happened. We have to identify the enemy. We have to recognize that division is okay. And then we have to pick up on the proof that division exists. And I've laid it out, I like to think, in this particular episode, but again, the clues are everywhere. They're everywhere. So let me mention this too about J.D. Vance. A lot of interesting things I've read about him in recent days. I read something that had to do with J.D. Vance. His wife, rather, is related to Vivek Ramaswamy, of all people, and that Vivek Ramaswamy's either mother or grandmother is a known communist. So again, these Indians coming out of the woodwork I find fascinating. There's also, of course, people saying that that's not really J.D. Vance and, he's a different person and blah, blah, blah. I don't necessarily believe that at all. But online it has J.D. Vance as being 5'7", and yet on screen J.D. Vance looks way taller than 5'7". I mean, I'm 5'8", but J.D. Vance looks like he's at least 6 feet tall, if not taller than that. And when he's standing next to Donald Trump, he almost looks like he's as tall, if not taller than Donald Trump. So I don't know what's going on with the shoes he's wearing or the boots or whatever else, but there was this particular X post, just wanted to read this. And this was sent my way, I believe. And it says, quote, "From ambrosia to obvious height differences to pasty neckline mask." This person thinks they're wearing a mask. I don't believe that. That's very similar to what we've seen on Pedo Joe. I don't think Joe's wearing a mask either. I think that's him. To his past connection with Les Wexner, Epstein's Victoria's Secret sugar daddy, it's quickly becoming evident that whoever J.D. Vance was is now very plausible that he's in full control by the White Hats. One of the last battles on the multi-chessboard is still in big tech and, of course, on the financial board, as it's connected by all fake digital money. Vance is a direct bridge into big tech and Silicon Valley. It says the financial crash is coming, but is being weaponized by both sides. This is the current tug of war between deep state and white hats. Both sides will try to weaponize it against the other. The crash must happen this year on Pedo Joe's watch. However, the deep state will do all it can to hold the crash until Trump gets into office to blame Trump. Now, this Ambrosia company is the company that existed that no longer exists, where J.D. Vance apparently sat on the board of this and was being funded by the likes of Les Wexner, again, based out of Columbus and, well-known child trafficker, allegedly, although it's true. But on top of that, the Ambrosia company had to do with injecting individuals with the blood of teenagers and babies in order to revitalize the adult from a youthful standpoint, that it had positive health impacts on aging in older individuals. It was shut down, of course, because of ethics, as you might expect. And wouldn't you know it, but Les Wexner actually donated to J.D. Vance's senatorial campaign back in, I guess that it would have been 2020. So again, multidimensionally speaking, why the hire of J.D. Vance? Is it because of all of his shady connections and this is designed to make the bad guys look like they still have a foothold in the White House? Or has J.D. Vance been presented information by the good guys as if to say, now we own you and you'll do what we want you to do, and you're going to put that smile on your face and you're going to play nice and you're going to do exactly what we want you to do? We'd like to hope that the latter is the truthful explanation. But time will tell on this. And again, it's not that we're really going to know or be told. I mean, there's not going to be some convention, which sucks because we'd all like to see this, but there's not going to be some convention that comes out and tells us the truth about everybody and where they sit on particular things and what their real role is and all the ins and outs of these intel operations that are taking place. That's not going to be explained to us. But we can learn this on our own. And again, as soon as J.D. Vance was called the pick, the Anons went digging, and they went digging hard into his past, into his associations, and rightfully so, because that's the world we live in now. It's shifted. All these timelines have shifted or been sped up, which is why everything seems to be happening right now at a fever pace. So yeah, it's exhausting, but it's happening. There's no doubt about that. Let me add this too. There are endless signs again that things are all lining up in a very interesting order. I don't want to use the word coincidence because I don't think that those exist. In fact, I'm certain they don't. But look at what's just happened over the last couple of days. You have Senator Bob Menendez, who was found guilty on all of those charges of fraud. And he's a sitting senator. Now, as soon as that happened, of course, I thought to myself, great, now go arrest the rest of them. Because let's face it, it's the rest of them. They're all paid money for political influence, and we know that, and that's a crime. The entire country just saw a sitting senator from New Jersey, Bob Menendez, who sleeps with hookers and does all kinds of stuff, this is a fact, cheats on his wife, XYZ, but that all of that occurred just this past week, and he's still a sitting senator, and was. And then now, of course, he's resigning, if he hasn't already. And open accounts have clearly stated that he's probably going to die in prison. Every single person in Washington, D.C. should be shitting their pants right now. That's an incredible revelation. That's an incredible move on the chessboard here. And again, Arrest them all. Who's sitting in Washington hasn't taken money for political influence? It may not have been gold bars. It may not have been a Mercedes-Benz for your wife. It may have been a few other things. It may have been stock options, insider trading. I don't know, a bucket of cash that shows up on their front doorstep when they go home to whatever state that they live in. It could be 1,000 things. But why not at this point arrest them all, or at the very least make them all panic? Because here's what we also saw at the RNC Convention, getting back to that very quickly. The director of the United States Secret Service, that woman, she was there. And she got surrounded by Republican senators. Langford was there, and Marsha Blackburn, and who's the other guy? Tom Barrasso. And they're all yelling at her. And she looks like a woman who is blackmailed to the bone. The look on her face is sheer and utter panic. Now, I don't like those senators at all. I can't stand them. But this is happening. They're eating each other. So again, for somebody to say we all have to stop the division, and Kevin McCarthy says we're all united in a way that we've never been, they're all full of it. All of them are full of it. The division is at face value, and that's a good thing. That has to happen, because we cannot repeat all the same dog and pony shows from the past that have existed in the Republican Party. You can't do it. They're two heads of the same snake, as we know, Republicans and Democrats. They're all purple when you mix them together, and they're all bad. But something's going on here, because it's too lined up. It's lined up in such an interesting way. Take Joe Biden and his COVID diagnosis, for God's sakes. I mean, that happened just the other day. Same thing. Well, what do you mean Joe has COVID? I thought he took the vaccines. Hell, I thought he took 5 of them. Doesn't that then mean that the vaccines don't work? Because they're not a vaccine, they're a categorized biological weapon. So doesn't that prove to everybody that they don't work? Joe's not wearing a mask either. And the media was like, Joe's not wearing a mask. He's apparently not taking the necessary precautions for somebody who's supposed to have COVID. Well, COVID doesn't exist. Masks are useless, and the shots kill the people who take them. And the tests are faulty. So who pulled the trigger on Joe saying he has COVID, quote unquote, to make sure that what? He can go back and hide someplace because he's completely incoherent. And then there's video of him, and he's having a hard time even crawling into the SUV, with a Secret Service agent quite literally pushing him in and then fixing his legs and his feet as he's leaning into the chair inside the SUV. This is incredible. There have to be moves that are being made by white hats and the good guys on all of this. It's too coincidental, quote unquote. It's too coincidental. So I love it. I find this fascinating. And this is going to increase. There's no doubt about it. This isn't stopping. The court cases as well. The court case in Florida was thrown out. Jack Smith's case, gone, done. He's appealed, won't matter, it's finished. The court case having to do, I believe, with Georgia, that particular court case, if that's still going on, some court case is still going on, but some either jury or results or what have you, isn't supposed to take place until December of this year after the election. Interesting. And all of those things that I just mentioned happened in the last 3 to 4 days. One after the other, these dominoes falling over like this is not an accident. Can't be. It just can't be. Now again, this is unrelated and it has to do with J.D. Vance just very quickly, but J.D. Vance grew up in Middletown, Ohio. Middletown, Ohio is about 30-40 minutes east of where I live, and it was their middle school there, Vale Middle School, was the second middle school where I student taught back in 2004. So he probably attended there as a child growing up in Middletown. But Middletown, again, is a branch campus, has a branch campus of Miami University, which is based out of Oxford, Ohio, of course, where I live. And at the exact same time, they have a Hamilton branch campus and a Westchester branch campus also, and then one in Luxembourg, Germany. Again, Middletown is a hardworking town. It used to be the home of AK Steel. Not sure if they're still there or not, but yeah. Again, sort of a big epicenter during the opioid crisis, without a doubt, back in the day. And a lot of doctors and a lot of nurses pushing a lot of drugs on a lot of people who didn't need it. And again, much like the whole COVID lie, they were getting kickbacks for pushing those drugs and the availability of those drugs and making it easy to obtain and so on and so on. So there you go. Again, the guy grew up not that far from me. That doesn't mean anything, of course. I just figured I'd bring that up just to give you a little geography lesson there. Let's see. Okay, those notes are done. Let me mention this now real quick. There are two photographers on the Saturday Trump rally incident that are being discussed right now. The one that I brought up on the show and the one that I brought up with Jesse James and Outcast was an individual wearing a plaid shirt who was standing behind Trump initially and then moved his way to Trump's right-hand side, which, again, if you're staring at the stage, would be the left-hand side of the stage. And this was the individual, again, who was taking photographs of him when he fell and then was behind the lectern and then actually followed him with his camera, consistently taking pictures. And this is also the photographer who, of course, took all of the pictures with the Secret Service agents around him, allegedly, or so he says anyway, as he was being carried away with his fist in the air. Same plaid shirt guy. The question that I have that endless other people have asked, including, I believe, Joe Rogan, is why on earth would a photographer with a black object as a camera pointing at him be allowed to do that after he had just been shot, while his face as president is still being exposed and clearly in the wide open? So why would that be allowed? Wouldn't someone come around and tackle the photographer or grab his arms and put the camera down? Because as we know, they do make guns out of cameras and cameras into guns. So this is a thing. This does exist. I remember years ago seeing a cell phone that had been turned into a .22 Magnum, basically, gun. It was like one of those old brick phones that, again, was an actual .22 Magnum gun. So this is a thing, but it just seems out of the ordinary that photographers would still be taking pictures standing that close to a president who had just been shot. Seems odd to me. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. There, of course, is also this, which stretches back to this has to be surveillance. All of this has to be surveilled to some extent. You have photographer Doug Mills, who is the one who allegedly caught the picture of Trump right before he got shot, as he was in front of the stage and potentially behind a barrier. And this happens to be allegedly the same photographer who took the picture of George Bush when one of George Bush's aides was whispering in George Bush's ear in that school on 9/11 that 9/11 was going down and that all of that was transpiring. Again, same photographer. What are the odds? How often has this photographer been at Trump rallies? That seems like a logical question. There's also people specifically saying that in order to catch the so-called vapor trail of a bullet, you have to be shooting at a particular speed. And the only reason you would be shooting at that speed is if you're anticipating them being shot, as if to catch a headshot, or to catch, again, the assassination of a president in very specific timing, in order to, again, have multiple pictures of this and then string them all together to show people what had actually transpired. So, again, I pray that there's some sort of surveillance taking place on all of these individuals and that they're wrapping them all up and catching all of them even in any communication that they're making from one person to the next, where they're saying, "Oh crap, we he didn't die. So what do we do now?" I mean, that right there is incriminating enough, I think. So I just wanted to mention that also. There's this piece of audio I want to play right now. This was an older individual describing their time at a past DNC convention in Chicago when they were young. And what he's basically doing is he's making a prediction as to what he thinks might happen at the DNC convention, which happens to be in Chicago coming up here. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
The one that's going to be interesting is the Democrat convention.
Where is that going to be?
That's in Chicago.
Like,
for those of you that weren't alive in 1968, the Democratic convention in Chicago in 1968, where Lyndon Johnson bowed out of the race. I remember sitting in my parents' living room. I was in like 8th grade or 7th grade. And Lyndon Johnson addressed the nation. He goes, "If nominated, I will not nor will I accept the nomination for your president." It's prime time. He said, "Wow, he just said he's stepping down." It was going to be Bobby Kennedy, and they shot Bobby Kennedy in the head. And then it was Hubert Humphrey. Nobody wanted Hubert Humphrey. And everybody went to Chicago, and they rioted on national TV. So we were watching the convention. They go, "Oh, go outside with the disturbance." And they're billy clubbing people, and the people are chanting, "The whole world's watching, the whole world's watching." They're just beating the shit out of the demonstrators. It was wild. That was Chicago Democratic Convention. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
So this is going to get real interesting. We're going to have to see what happens here. I think anything goes. Anything goes here. Again, you're talking about missing thermite. FBI just lost a bunch of, I'm sorry, it wasn't thermite, ammonium nitrate, my apologies. All those, whatever, train filled with ammonium nitrate just disappears. And now there's a DNC convention. I mean, the theories flying around as to explosions taking place, multiple explosions, a number of different things. Who's to say? But again, vigilance is key here, heads on a swivel, trying to not get confused as much as possible, as confusing as it can be, and as exhausting as all of it is. But yeah, I'm just going to kind of leave the geopolitics there with that right now. In fact, I'll just end this segment with this, is that I saw a posting of from Michael Yon, and I put it in the Last War video, but you know, he's a rather objective individual, I think, and he said basically what I've said on the show numerous times too, is that we need to see evidence. That if we don't see actual evidence, and we're not seeing things that we've normally seen in the past, and we're not being shown particular things like evidence and clues and certain photographs, etc., that if we don't see this, then you can't make a judgment as to what happened in one direction or another. Again, you know, like I said, I've seen numerous theories out there claiming that Donald Trump cut himself. I've seen numerous theories saying that Donald Trump just broke, you know, a blood capsule up against his ear. There's ample evidence that there was a shooting taking place. I don't think anybody can doubt that. Too many eyewitnesses openly saying that there were gunshots and impact noises. A lot of gun owners in the crowd, of course, they would know what that sounds like. I'm not saying one thing or another. I'm simply saying that I'm an evidence-based guy. It's the way that I think, and if the evidence, again, if we're not presented all of the evidence, then we can't possibly make a logical decision or conclusion applying the scientific method. Again, they do the same thing in court. If certain evidence isn't allowed, why is it not allowed? And then if evidence is withheld, then what happens to the court case? It's thrown out because you can't withhold evidence unless it's decided upon by both parties that it needs to be withheld. But even so, there's too many moving pieces in all of this. There's too many moving parts. So let's focus on what we can control. Let's focus on who the real enemy is and how it's in moments like this, as I said earlier, where the enemy is always trying to gain a foothold and profit because they're playing on people's emotions. So don't get overly emotional, I guess. I kind of was in the last episode, but I was tired. Again, I'll cut myself that slack. But that's the ongoing thing here. Look at things as objectively as humanly possible. Look at history and what's taken place with history, and then maybe we can plan out particular things a particular way. But yeah. Again, I've seen numerous posts saying, again, that there were numerous shooters that, the first shots that were taken were at Trump and in the crowd, and then the shots that followed after that were against a shooter that was located somewhere around the water tower or on the water tower behind the stage, and then shots were taken at the rooftop. Who's to know at this point? Who's to know? But I've seen footage, and I put it in the war video again, of the individual in the stand who allegedly lost his life, him dropping, and then someone else almost being hit in the crowd as well. Which again begs the question, where was the ambulance? Aren't these rallies loaded with ambulances? And why were paramedics not rushing to the stands? And yet it was a couple of police officers were. And then, of course, there were citizens taking the individual down and helping carry the individual down. And then I saw this. I didn't mention this in the last episode. There was an individual, a medical doctor, who wasn't working the scene. He was just there as an attendee with his wife. He was making the rounds on numerous channels, claiming that he was the one who was engaging in CPR and chest compressions of the retired firefighter who was hit in the head. And he openly said it was a headshot. He was hit in the head. There was brain matter. He was doing CPR on the individual. They took him to a tent, and he was dead right there. So, yeah, that's interesting as well. But I find it odd also that there were no ambulances there because, again, if somebody was claiming that someone had been shot, they would normally get the attention of a cop, and then the cop would call an ambulance, and then the paramedics would come in with a gurney. That wasn't the case. So I'm not saying one thing or another, but yeah, there you have it. Okay. A couple other things here. And then again, I have a story at the end that I find not coincidental. This first story came from our Virginia educator, and the second story came from Sicily, who I believe found it on Gab, from Dissident Soaps over there on Gab. But this first story was titled, this is from, Maryland, dpscs.maryland.gov. It was titled, Maryland DPSCS Pioneers a Historic Partnership Between the Division of Correction and the University System of Maryland to offer prison education programs in all Maryland state prisons. This was dated April 11th of 2024. Again, is this part of the old restorative justice stuff that I've brought up in the past, giving prisoners a second chance, etc., or is this blatant fraud under the guise of being a charitable restorative justice move in order to get prisoners to basically have access to college and college campuses upon leaving, as if to say the taxpayers in the state will pay for you to attend college or receive a university education, either within the prison or when you get out, as long as you have good behavior, XYZ. And then, of course, is it rife with fraud? Why wouldn't it be? You have these university systems, after all, that are losing enrollment, and their enrollment is plummeting, and they're having to raise their tuition rates because they have to stay afloat financially, or else they have to sell their university to a foreign state if they haven't already. So why wouldn't you want higher enrollment, not just from prisoners, but as we've discussed here, even illegals? This is happening. This is a big, big deal. This, of course, is why I don't recommend brick and mortar schools under any circumstance. So again, it's loaded with fraud. And speaking of fraud, here's the next one that Sicily sent. This is from themainwire.com. There we go. It was titled Westbrook Residents head back to the ballot box to vote on a $51 million school budget with 13% property tax hike. It says our population of students, quote, receiving multilingual services continues to grow, now to over 500 students, many of whom are newcomers and require targeted support in English as well as social services, unquote, so said the Westbrook superintendent. This is a nightmare. This is happening in every American school district, K-12 and otherwise. They're ushering in illegal aliens. They don't have the services to cater to them, to speak their language, teach them the things that they are being taught, allegedly. They don't have the aides. They don't have the bilingual instructors. They're throwing these students who don't speak a lick of English in classrooms with individuals who speak one language. Which, by the way, when I was applying for school back in the early 2000s to be a K-12 school teacher, that's when the question was consistently popping up on resumes as to whether or not you spoke multiple languages. There was a time where that was never on a K-12 application. Now it's almost a requirement. It's getting to that stage. This is also why people don't want to enter the business, because at the college level, they're being forced to take foreign language, and they don't want to take it. They don't want to learn another language. Why would they? They're also being told, of course, in teacher education programs to get certified in special ed consistently. Make sure you have special education certification. That way you never lose your job. Well, we know what the K-12 business is doing. They're increasing K-12 special education on a constant basis by telling everybody that they're retarded, when in fact they're not. And they're doing that for the purposes of gaining more money. The more special ed students they have, the more money they get. It's ridiculous. The whole business is fraudulent. And they're making all of these moves that they can't logically make. And then, of course, what's their answer? What's the answer to their problems? To tax Americans. To fund their fraud. It's a never-ending cycle. And it isn't going to go away until the school districts themselves completely collapse or they transition to an online environment only. I'm telling you. Or, I should say, the buildings leave, the people who are competent and speak English leave, i.e. the students, and then what are you left with? You're left with foreigners, the physically handicapped, and the mentally handicapped. That's who's going to end up in these brick-and-mortar K-12 schools. It's not going to be the logical, thinking, competent individuals who can speak English, read, and write it. It's not going to be them. It's going to be everybody else. That's where the business is heading. Here's the last one. This is from the Daily Stormer. It was titled, California, Newsom signs law banning schools from telling parents they're tranifying their kids. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Right now at 5:30, a new first-in-the-nation law goes into effect in California.
The law aims to protect LGBTQ students, but it's already getting pushback.
Yeah, Governor Gavin Newsom signed the law banning policies that require teachers to tell parents if their child changes their gender identity.
Well, now billionaire Elon Musk has vowed to move 2 of his companies out of California in response to this. Arlen Ramirez spoke to an LGBTQ advocate who insists the bill is all about protecting children.
Elon Musk took to his own social media platform to announce that his companies X and SpaceX would be leaving California, citing the new law that prohibits mandating schools to notify families about student gender identity changes as the last straw. Musk said the law and others like it are attacking both families and companies, and he would be taking his businesses to Texas. The bill was signed by Governor Newsom on Monday after a fierce battle in Sacramento.
It's going to have others on the other side try to force school districts to keep secrets from parents. And I think that's a non-starter for me.
But LGBTQ rights advocates were quick to criticize Musk's latest move.
And just because he's rich doesn't mean he even understands the issues he is making comments about.
Gabrielle Antolovich of the Billy DeFrank Center in San Jose says she lived through the experience of having her school notify her parents that she was attracted to women.
And they didn't understand what was going on, that what horrible thing had I done. And then, all these fights happened in my family, and it was none of their business coming to my parents with that.
The new law comes after several school districts in California passed policies requiring that parents be notified if a child requests to change their gender identification. And Tolovich says it could protect some students from so-called forced outings.
Schools need to be a safe place for young people to experiment with who they are, what to wear, the look of your hair, the gender you feel most comfortable in.
Nationwide, at least 6 states have requirements that school notify parents when minors disclose that they are transgender.
Well, Arizona and Idaho also require schools to provide certain information to parents, but do not specify gender expression or sexual orientation.
Yuck. Yuck. That's about all I can say. Why send them? The woman doing the majority of the talking, that old lesbian gal, she's in her 70s and still hasn't grown up. Multicolored hair, multicolored clothes, she's all over the place. She looks like a Picasso. It's disgusting. And she's not really gay. She just didn't have men pay attention to her because she's ugly. That's all. It's that simple. That's really where a lot of the gay stuff comes from. I haven't gone deep into it. Yes, it's vaccination related. Yes, it's abuse related. Yes, it's divorce related. It's a number of things. It's also that some people are just flat out ugly. And people of the opposite sex aren't attracted to them. So what do? Well, they look to the same sex. And they snoop around and see what other ugly people they can, hang out with. That's essentially it. It's not brain surgery. Okay. Let me end with this now. Story time. Hand to God, okay? Right hand in the air, hand to God. I'm not making this up. Approximately a week ago, it was last Thursday. Last Thursday, I was having lunch with a couple of friends in town. And the conversation turned to numerology, and the two of them seeing particular numbers, specifically 333, 3 threes in a row, or 444 being in a particular row also. There's also 555 and things like that. Of course, 666 being terrible, and then 777 being a very good thing also. But specifically we were talking about 333. And then on Saturday, I was walking through the house and I looked at a clock that I never look at for the time. I never look at it. And this was on Saturday, the same day as the incident and the shooting, quote unquote, at the Trump rally. And the digital clock said 3:33 in the afternoon. Now, at the time, I didn't think anything of it necessarily, although you think I would have, given the conversation that we were having. And then the day after that, which would have been Sunday, I believe, Sunday or Monday, I came across this post on greatawakening.win that was titled, The Numbers 333. And here's what it said, quote, Spiritual significance. In many spiritual traditions, the number 333 is considered a sign of divine presence. It is often seen as a message from the angels or a higher power, indicating that you are being guided and supported. It says, the reason I bring this number up is the Trump attempted assassination happened exactly 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days to the presidential election. Now, the other day, I was having lunch with Kim Carter, friend of the show, nurse friend. We got together for lunch. We were talking about everything. And she started talking about numerology, and she said, "Are you aware of all of this?" And I nodded my head and I said, "This is a thing apparently, and there are lots of different signs and a number of other stuff." I think I even shared a story about a book that I would highly recommend to anybody to read, and it is called "Angels in My Hair" by Lorna Byrne. and she's written a couple of books, a number of them, I believe. But Angels in My Hair, I believe, was her first book. And she would say this is an individual who sees angels and talks with them and has told her things that are going to happen in advance before they actually happen, regardless of, again, how heartbreaking they may be. And even God himself speaks with her directly, and this is a thing and this happens, and I believe this. So I'm just letting everybody know that I firmly believe this. I have no doubt about it. With that said, in the book, Lorna Byrne specifically brings up a number of different signs that you can see to know that your guardian angel is there and watching you, or that angels are protecting you and are there and are trying to get you to acknowledge their presence and or thank them or recognize them or slow down and, remain calm, and a number of other things. And one of those clues was if you ever see a feather, specifically a smaller white feather, that if you ever come across a small white feather that may even be outside or on a windowsill or even sort of out of place, as if to say this small little white feather is all by itself, that's basically a sign of divine intervention as well, and divine presence. I have seen that as well throughout the course of my life and have remembered the moments where that has been the case also. It doesn't have to be during hard times or anything. It can just be any day of the week. But, if you know what you're looking for, then of course you'll be able to see it. So we start to have this conversation, and then I read Kim that Great Awakening post that I just read here. And we keep talking and we have our lunch, and the bill comes, and I come to pay, I go to pay for the bill, and I start to write in the tip on the receipt without really focusing in on the cost of the food. But I was going to leave a sizable tip, and I usually leave about 50%, to be honest. I'm a big tipper, always have been, and it wasn't a huge bill, but by any stretch. But either way, I started to write in a tip, and then I scratched it out, and I thought, well, I've got cash on me, so I'll pay in cash for the tip. That way she can take the cash, and then they can just say there was no tip, here's the thing, and she gets to walk away with $20. So that's when I looked at the actual amount for both of our meals and our drinks and the actual total. The total on the bill was $33.30. 333. And I looked at it, and my jaw dropped. And I looked at her and I went, "You're not going to believe this." And I picked up the bill and I turned it around and I showed her. And she just started laughing. And she goes, "You see?" And I went, "Unbelievable. This is incredible." I mean, and we were having some deep conversations about a lot of serious stuff, but there you have it. So there are things happening here, ladies and gentlemen. There are big, big things, and we can't wrap our arms around all of it nor seek to understand all of it, but there are good things occurring. With that said, that does not mean that there aren't going to be bad things occurring. It's still war. And we still need to remain vigilant, and we still need to call out the enemy, and we still need to focus on who our enemy is and not take our eye off of the ball on all of that. But of course, with all of that said, we should understand that God is very real, that he speaks to us using a number of different methods, and if we can tune into what those are and recognize them, then we're going to be all right, and we're certainly on the right path. So thank you for listening as always. Have a great weekend. Make it a restful one, of course. Pay attention, and I will catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.